Mariah Carey Testifies. Audio played. Diddy's chilling words leave court in shock. When Mariah Carey walked into the courtroom, no one clapped, only silence followed. But what she said next froze the entire room. This wasn't a concert stage. This wasn't the Grammys. This was a federal courtroom, and Mariah Carey, global icon voice of a generation, stepped into it, not as a performer but as a witness. And not just any witness, the one who could finally speak the truth. Wearing a razor-sharp black suit with subtle gold accents, her face half concealed behind oversized sunglasses, Mariah looked like a ghost from someone's past. Her legal team flanked her like palace guards as she walked slowly, deliberately toward the witness stand. Then the court clerk announced the name, Mariah Carey. For 5 full seconds no one moved. Not even the stenographer typed. It was as if time paused to hear what came next. The trial was already steeped in explosive footage and twisted testimonies, but nothing prepared the room for what Mariah revealed. She didn't come to talk about love. She didn't come to talk about fame. She came to talk about that night. 2003. Diddy. And one terrifying sentence he allegedly whispered behind closed doors. If they find out what I really do, it's over. For years, Mariah had remained silent. Silenced by fear, by pressure, by hush money that glittered like gold but felt like a muzzle. But on this day, she wasn't afraid anymore. Mariah Carey didn't sing, she testified, and what she said shook the courtroom to its core. His face gave a subtle twitch, barely a blink, maybe the flicker of a lip, but it said everything. This wasn't how he thought today would go. The judge, typically reserved to a nod or glance of protocol, paused for a second longer than usual, recognizing that this was no ordinary witness taking the stand. It wasn't just anyone. It was Mariah Carey, the global superstar, the woman with everything to lose and seemingly no reason to be here except to speak the truth. Outside the courtroom, chaos erupted. Reporters barked headlines into cameras. News tickers lit up across screens nationwide. Mariah Carey testifies in Diddy trial. Inside, however, everything slowed. With deliberate calm, Mariah reached for her sunglasses and took them off, her expression unreadable but firm. Her heels echoed softly as she approached the stand, and a murmur rippled through the back rows of the gallery. "She's really doing this," someone whispered. Then the prosecutor rose, voice steady but with a slight edge of awe. "Miss Carey, would you please tell the court about your relationship with Mr. Sean Combs?" Mariah didn't blink. Her tone was cool, measured. "We were never close," she said plainly. "Just 2 people moving through the same circles. Not friends, not partners, just around." There was no performance in her voice, only clarity. She paused just long enough for the tension to build. Things stayed civil until 2003. Instantly, all eyes shifted to Diddy. His posture stiffened. He didn't look at her. He didn't move. His lawyer leaned in to whisper something, but Diddy didn't respond. Mariah adjusted slightly in her seat and continued. "I didn't come here to address gossip," she said. "I never thought I'd have to speak these words under oath, but I'm here, because of what I heard in private, words I've carried for over 20 years. Every juror leaned forward. Even the air in the room felt heavier. There was a shift in atmosphere, palpable and undeniable. This was no longer a celebrity cameo. This was a reckoning. And then she said it, eyes locked on Diddy. "I've waited more than 2 decades to say this." Her voice didn't tremble, her stare didn't break, and suddenly the courtroom realized this wasn't a pop icon on the stand. This was a witness to something bigger. Before 2003, I saw Sean Combs more often than I ever intended to. Music video sets, award shows, charity galas, corporate dinners, he was always there. We weren't collaborators, we weren't even friends. But we moved in the same high-stakes orbit. We had the same rivals, the same media shadows, the same hangers-on. In the late 90s and early 2000s, you couldn't be in the music industry without passing through his sphere, even if you didn't want to. I remember one moment clearly. It was 2001 backstage at an MTV VMA after-party. He approached me, complimented my new album, and then said something odd. "You're too clean for this place." He smiled when he said it like it was a joke. I laughed too, because what else could I do? But the words stayed with me. They clung to the back of my mind like a warning I didn't know how to read. Back then, the industry was more than music, it was survival. Who you stood next to, who you posed with, who you were seen laughing with, it all meant something. And being seen with Diddy, that was like armor for some people. For others like me, it felt like being watched. There were always whispers, too many to ignore, about private after-parties where you couldn't even enter the room without signing an NDA, about favors, about disappearances from invitations from playlists from entire social circles if you didn't play along. The same name kept surfacing: Diddy, not as a producer, not as a mogul, but as something else, as the architect of a quiet, powerful empire, one that operated in the shadows of red carpets and champagne flutes. I never went public with those concerns. I didn't have to. Back then, staying silent felt like the safest choice. But things changed in 2003. That was the year everything sharpened. I remember the night vividly, July 19th. I had just wrapped a long music video shoot and was exhausted physically and emotionally. But my manager insisted I attend an industry retreat in the Hamptons. Everyone will be there, they said. It'll look good for your image. And the host, someone rebuilding his brand. That someone was Diddy. The estate was massive, seaside, opulent, cold in a way money can't hide. The cars were lined up with tinted windows. There were 2 private checkpoints just to get to the front door. Inside were celebrities, executives, media titans, and people I didn't recognize. People who weren't performers, but watchers, observers. They looked at us like we were inventory. I wanted to leave by 10 p.m. I remember checking the clock. I even told my assistant I felt strange being there. But I stayed a little longer. And that one decision would haunt me for years. He approached me calmly, almost too calmly. There was a kind of polished stillness to him that made my skin crawl, not out of fear, but a quiet, crawling discomfort I couldn't name in the moment. "Are you interested in checking out the VIP lounge?" he asked. His tone was light, but his eyes were scanning me, calculating. I shook my head, told him I was exhausted from the shoot earlier that day. I thought that would be enough. It wasn't. He insisted. "There's just something I need to clear up," he said. No details, no room for refusal. So I followed him. We stepped into a side room off the main hallway. 2 bodyguards immediately flanked the entrance. The door closed behind me. The lighting was dim, almost theatrical, soft lamps and velvet chairs, like a set, meant to make someone let their guard down. He poured a drink, swallowed it, then just looked at me, stared at me in complete silence for what felt like a lifetime. I didn't know what he wanted. I didn't understand why he brought me in there. And then he said it. "If they find out what I really do, it's over." The courtroom was silent as I repeated that line. I remember the way he said it. His mouth didn't twitch, his eyes didn't blink. There was no smile, no mask. He wasn't joking. He said it like someone standing at the edge of their own empire, watching it collapse in their mind. I didn't know what he meant, but I knew it wasn't small. I felt it, deep in my chest. When I tried to excuse myself, he stepped in front of the door for just a second, just long enough to make a point. Then he leaned in slightly, and with a low voice he said, "I'll take care of you, but stay quiet." That's when I saw it, the smile, the one that told me everything I needed to know about what was behind the words. I didn't answer. I just walked out without looking back. And I've carried that moment with me for 20 years. I told the court I won't carry it in silence any longer. The next morning, before the sun even came up, I was gone. I slipped out past the security guards without a word. My longtime assistant drove. I didn't speak, just watched the sunrise from the back seat as we left the Hamptons behind and headed for Manhattan. What I had witnessed, it felt like a warning, like I was never supposed to be there, like I had brushed up against something hidden and dangerous. But it didn't end there. Later that day, back at my suite in the St. Regis, the concierge knocked at my door. He was carrying a sleek black package, no return address, just my silver-initialed monogram on the front. He said it had been delivered moments earlier by a private courier. Inside, a neat stack of pristine $100 bills, bound in gold bands, exactly $100,000. There was no explanation, no sender, no signature. Just a small ivory envelope tucked beneath the cash. In soft handwriting it read, "Regarding the time you made available, enjoy the evening. Thank you." My stomach dropped. My hands were cold. I remember staring at that envelope, and for the first time in years, I felt truly afraid. It wasn't just the money, it was the message beneath the message, the assumption, the suggestion that I was part of something I didn't agree to, that my silence was expected. Bought. My manager told me to send it back immediately, to burn it if I had to. I tried to call the number listed on the note. It had already been disconnected. Later, my team confirmed with hotel security that the courier had in fact arrived in a black SUV, rented through a Manhattan fleet often used by known associates of Bad Boy Entertainment. And that's when I knew. This wasn't about misunderstanding. This was orchestrated. And 20 years later, I finally found the strength to say what I saw. I had no desire for the financial compensation Mariah stated in court. Whatever it was, I needed answers, or preferably some distance from that reality. But instead of that, I felt terrified. Then she put the whole package in a hotel safe. After a few weeks, she returned it to the estate by mail, leaving no return address, but writing, "You know where this belongs." Yeah, she kept silent about it for years, even when it came to her closest friends. Something like that happens, and you attempt to put it out of your mind. But that memory flooded back when she saw Diddy enter the courtroom months ago, facing charges of extortion abuse and more. I felt compelled to say something. In the end, she decided she couldn't stand for the envelope to remain silent any longer. All eyes were fixed on the prosecutor's subsequent inquiry. "Dear Ms. Hay Carey, did you hear from any other ladies at the 2003 party who were worried or who just vanished?" Martha grew hesitant. She became visibly distressed for the very first time throughout her testimony. One was there, she proclaimed. She had no notoriety. Art was not her forte. Something about public relations or marketing seems to have been her calling. Mariah just recalled the woman as Lana, but she did tell me that she felt out of place at the party after our brief conversation. The woman had said something about inadvertently entering a side room. An individual was standing over a man as he signed a document, and she claimed to have seen a camera lights and the man himself. Swiftly she departed from the room. But Mariah realized Lana was missing later that night. She went unmentioned. A peculiar message arrived on Mariah's studio voicemail 2 months later. The words, "I shouldn't have seen that," were murmured by a lady. "No one should talk to me," they said. "You should be careful too." Mariah warned. Later that day, an intern at the studio accidentally erased the note. Still, she couldn't shake the voice. Whether it was Lana or not, she could never say for sure. Towards the beginning of 2004, she requested that her boss investigate the woman's identity. "She's gone," he informed her. "She has been wiped from the map. No recent job postings. Socials washed." He cautioned her from pressing it. Aware of anything being amiss, she informed the court. However, I was also aware of the inner workings of the industry. Those who dabbled didn't remain. The court probed her for proof that may connect Diddy to Lana's abduction. According to her, there was no tangible proof. Stay scared. The same fear, that kept me quiet for 20 years. However, prosecutors utilized her evidence to connect a tangled web of crimes, including disappearing aides, mute dancers, and now a pop star who may have been paid to ignore the whole thing. In spite of her private struggles and the aftermath of her breakdown in 2001, Mariah's career continued to rise by 2004. However, she did testify that something changed behind the scenes. For specific events, the phone stopped ringing, she explained, just the ones associated with his inner circle, such free, private galas and label-sponsored accolades. Not all. For a moment she choked it up to chance that I suddenly wasn't on the list. However, after that the calls began, soft, unobtrusive, almost amicable. "Mariah, you're incredible," said one famous executive from a big label. Having said that, I hope you don't bring up that evening again. Not healthy was a word that lingered in her thoughts for a long time. As she informed the jury, she had received a second message from a common acquaintance, stating that bad things happen to women who talk too much. I was disgusted. She stated, "I was enraged. I was also quite intelligent. Knowing when a warning is genuine is essential if you want to make it this far in the profession." She then changed the subject to an awards ceremony encounter she had with Diddy in 2006. He was around by younger artists and was smiling and excited. He stood motionless when she met his gaze across the room. After that, he flashed her a smile, calculating, frigid. "All I needed to know was that smile," she remarked. "Charm has nothing to do with it. Mastery was at stake." "You remained silent," he said. She had no more contact with him after that. In that instant, she knew she had been correct to remain silent. However, she realized that quiet was no longer an option as she watched the trial develop in 2025, seeing other women coming forward and witnessed the shadowy parts of the industry begin to crumble. "I'm no longer scared of him," she declared with conviction. "When the truth gets out, the system that shielded him loses all power. Thus I have no fear of it." As the prosecution leaned in for a seemingly straightforward follow-up question, the atmosphere in the courtroom once again changed. "Dear Miss Carey, did you overhear Mr. Commies threaten anyone else?" Mariah nodded slowly and let out a breath, "I think so." She recounted an incident that she had never mentioned before, but now it's the right time. In 2005, she was in Manhattan visiting a studio for a collaboration project when she overheard Diddy talking to a young female R&B singer, a rising star known for her gospel roots and powerful vocals. Mariah was reluctant to publicly identify the artist, but she did verify that the initials and career history corresponded to a former top charter singer. A side room next to the main studio was where the discussion took place. Mariah had come early in the hopes of seeing her producer, but she inadvertently found herself hearing Diddy's voice through a little partition. "You remember who gave you those records?" he allegedly said as she testified. "Whoever owns your masters is remembered by you. Act as if you had no constraints. There are regulations in this field," he then said. "If you think you can walk away, remember what happened to the last girl who tried." Simple Mariah stepped back in shock as he spoke more softly but with hatred. For fear of mishearing charges or retaliation, she refrained from making any public mention of it. But then, months later, the very artist called off her tour, didn't show up to an awards ceremony, and disappeared from the public eye. "For Mariah, she just disappeared," was her statement before the judge. Plus, nobody ever publicly inquired as to why. As everyone was aware, each and every one of us did. That comment carried a lot of weight, with his mouth closed and his expression expressionless. Diddy sat still at the defense table. The harm had already been done, even though his solicitors leaned in for hushed counsel. "I should have spoken up then," Mariah said. "It was terrifying. Perhaps I was being overly suspicious." This portion of her testimony was not only for her, it was for every artist who was never given the opportunity to testify. However, now that I've seen it, I know it was true. This wasn't only a trial, it was a reckoning, and the gallery appeared to grasp it at that very moment. The audience had already settled down for Mariah's ninth part of testimony. There was a severe lack of speed in the reporting. The jury seemed to be really moved. It appeared as though even the judge was uneasy as he shifted in his chair. Even while Mariah maintained her composure, she started talking about things that suggested there were coordinated cover-ups. She stated, "There were files that people told me not to look at, contracts. Invoices, agreements made under strange names, things that didn't make sense." Or, in 2008, she testified that she had asked a former assistant to look into an event that Diddy had co-sponsored, which had gone untelevised for some reason, despite being a massive production. The assistant uncovered what seemed to be a web of shell corporations and shadow businesses whose sole purpose was to conceal payment information. "We don't dig into that," was the executive's direct response when her staff brought it up. "You shouldn't either." The courtroom whispered as Mariah detailed how the increasing pressure to be silent intensified in response to her increasing questioning. There were threats against her publicist involving unpublished studio film, anonymous suggestions about possible scandals and rumors that previous tabloid tales may reappear if she persisted in investigating. The next night was the 2010 award show. It was requested that Mariah give Diddy a Lifetime Achievement Award. According to Mariah, she chose not to. 3 endorsement opportunities inexplicably fell through within a week. According to her, they made no attempt to contact or provide an explanation. They simply became unconscious, she remarked. The defense raised an objection, stating that the testimony was speculative. However, the judge upheld the testimony, because to its pattern relevance, what followed after that the prosecution wanted to know. The prosecutor inquired. Mariah gazed forward. "When no one ever asked me to testify, I figured it was best to sit tight, and I would not hold anything back when that day came." Mariah Carey did not whisper her closing statement in court. There was zero passion. "I am not here to rehash suffering." It was very serious and incisive. "The world now knows just who Diddy is, and I'm here to tell you because I believe in the power of the truth." Her testimony finished with a moment of silence. Apparently not even the court reporter was unnerved. From the witness stand, Mariah descended, and her security detail made a beeline for the exit. Avoiding the questioning of reporters, she remained silent. A wave eluded her. There was no sign of a smile on her face. Her demeanor was that of someone who has just tossed a pebble into a calm lake, unassuming and dignified. There was a media frenzy outside the courthouse. Worldwide hashtags such as Mariah Testifies and Diddy Trial. Truth started trending. Some news analysts and talk programs lauded her courage, while others questioned what more she could have withheld. Diddy returned indoors and sat down at the table. Sitting in startled silence, his legal team watched. No one blinked as the judge signaled for a break. The cultural discourse changed later that night, when Mariah's statement appeared on all the major networks. The disintegration of an empire with the pop queen playing a spark was at stake in this celebrity court case. She hit the high note and shattered the silence. That sums up what happened in the days after Mariah Carey's testimony, a shift that was felt across the entertainment industry as a whole, not only in the courtroom. Everyone from fans to executives to agents to producers to former partners began to rethink their decision to remain silent. Nobody wanted to be found on the other side of an unseen boundary after everything was said and done. Mariah Carey's famous quote, "If they find out what I really do, it's over," was used prominently in news articles, TikTok's late-night interviews, and investigative shows. What was formerly thought of as mere Hollywood chit-chat is now recognized as an essential component of the prosecution's case. Additionally, rumors started to circulate behind the scenes. 2 ex-executives of Diddy's record company allegedly agreed to provide sealed testimony. According to Factor, the rumors someone who had worked as an assistant at Bad Boy Entertainment sponsored red carpet events commented cryptically on Instagram saying, "Some people silenced me, others paid me." Rolling Stone was informed by an unidentified source that if she was courageous enough to speak, maybe it's time we all were. I maintained secrecy, but that was all. Justice will be served. Even famous people who had always taken a neutral stance were suddenly changing their minds. Numerous talk shows lauded Mariah for her bravery. Famous were. People shared excerpts from her testimony with the simple caption, "Respect." Veteran members of the industry discreetly deleted images of themselves, with Diddy indicating a distinct separation from the once untouchable star. Still, the consequences were magnified within the confines of the courtroom. Evidently, the jury was somewhat anxious. The prosecution, feeling emboldened, moved to summon other witnesses, including former tour managers and security contractors, to testify. The defensive team's effort at damage control, which involved casting Mariah in the role of an eloquent storyteller, was unsuccessful, because everyone could see through Mariah's deceit. She had no need to lie. Money was unnecessary for her. Notoriety wasn't necessary. Neither a record nor a project was she promoting. She appeared in court, anticipating the discovery of the truth. Instead of fleeing from the situation, she decided to walk into the storm. That rendered her dangerous, but not in a tabloid sense. Rather, she was dangerous because she spoke the truth and broke silence, the type of threat that brings down fear-based civilizations. An unnamed juror allegedly stated, when she looked at him, it was like she was finally free, and he knew it. The courtroom had seen more than just a testimony. It had watched a transformation. Mariah Carey is the kind of person who can draw back the curtain, and nobody can put it back. So the domino effect was already in motion.